Billionaire's ex-new wife stopped my twins from their father's funeral until the lawyers said they inherited everything. To my wife, Georgina Harrington, I leave nothing. The lawyer's words echoed through the chapel like a gunshot. I watched Georgina's face drain of color, watched her perfectly painted mouth fall open in shock. Around us, 60 people gasped in unison. "That's impossible," Georgina screamed, shooting to her feet. Her designer black dress hugged her thin frame as she pointed one shaking finger at the silver-haired attorney. "I'm his wife. Winston would never do that to me." Theodore Beaumont didn't even flinch. He simply adjusted his reading glasses and continued in that calm, measured voice. "Furthermore, I have been instructed to read a letter Mr. Harrington left specifically for this occasion. A letter explaining exactly why his wife receives nothing." "No." Georgina's voice cracked. "No, you can't." 6 months ago, Beaumont read from the handwritten letter I discovered, evidence of my wife's affair with her personal trainer, Kyle Morrison. Every head in that oceanfront chapel turned to look at the young man sitting beside Georgina. His handsome face went completely white. "But that's not all," Beaumont continued. "I also discovered communications between my wife and her lover, communications discussing ways to accelerate my death." The chapel erupted. People were standing, shouting, demanding answers. And I just sat there with my 12-year-old twins, Fletcher and Ramona, watching the woman who had destroyed our lives finally get what she deserved. But let me back up. Let me tell you how we ended up in that chapel. Let me tell you about the cruelty that came before the justice. Because this story doesn't start with Georgina's downfall. It starts with my children being told they had no right to say goodbye to their own father. Before I continue, I need to ask you something. Have you ever watched someone you love make a choice so catastrophically wrong that it destroys everything good in their life? Have you ever been powerless to stop it? Drop a comment and let me know, because that's exactly what happened to me. And if you want to see how karma delivered the most satisfying justice I've ever witnessed, you need to stay with me until the very end of this story. Hit that like button right now, and let's get into it. 2 weeks before that Will reading, I got the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning in November. I was making breakfast in our small kitchen in Brooklyn when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Is this Cassandra Wilder?" A man's voice, professional and somber. "Yes, this is she." "Miss Wilder, my name is Theodore Beaumont. I'm an attorney with Beaumont and Associates. I'm calling regarding Winston Harrington." My ex-husband's name sent a jolt through my chest. I hadn't spoken to Winston in 8 months. Not since he'd called and said he needed to focus on his health and business. Not since he'd essentially cut our children out of his life. "What about Winston?" I asked, gripping the phone tighter. "I'm very sorry to inform you that Mr. Harrington passed away yesterday evening. He suffered a sudden heart attack in his office." The kitchen seemed to tilt. I reached for the counter to steady myself. "He's dead?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm terribly sorry for your loss." "Dead." Winston was dead. The man I'd married 20 years ago. The father of my children. The person who'd broken my heart and abandoned his family. Dead at 52 years old. "Miss Wilder, are you still there?" "Yes," I managed. "I'm here. What happens now?" "The funeral arrangements are being handled by Mrs. Georgina Harrington. I'm calling to inform you as a courtesy, given that you share children with the deceased. You should receive formal notification within the next few days." Georgina was handling everything. Of course she was. The woman who'd stolen my husband and systematically poisoned his relationship with his own children was now in charge of his funeral. "Thank you for calling," I said numbly. I hung up and stood there in my kitchen, staring at the eggs burning in the pan. I should turn off the stove. I should do something. But I couldn't move. "Mom?" I turned. Fletcher stood in the doorway of the kitchen, still in his pajamas. His green eyes, so much like his father's, looked at me with concern. "Mom, what's wrong? You look weird. How do you tell a 12-year-old boy that his father is dead? How do you explain that the man who was supposed to love him unconditionally had instead chosen a new wife over his own children, and now he'd never have the chance to fix it?" "Fletcher, sweetheart, I need you to get your sister. Both of you come sit down. What's happening?" "Just get Ramona, please." He ran upstairs. I heard his feet pounding on the old wooden stairs of our brownstone. I heard him knocking on Ramona's door. "Mona, Mom needs us downstairs. Something's wrong." I turned off the stove, scraped the burnt eggs into the trash, made myself take deep breaths. They came down together. Fletcher tall for his age, all long limbs and serious expression. Ramona smaller, delicate, with long dark hair and those same green eyes. Both of them looking at me with growing fear. "Sit down, babies," I said. They sat at the kitchen table. I pulled out a chair and sat across from them. "I just got a phone call," I began. It was a lawyer. "He called to tell me that your dad passed away yesterday." Silence. Complete silence. They just stared at me. "What do you mean passed away?" Ramona finally whispered. "I mean he died, sweetheart. He had a heart attack." "No." Ramona shook her head. "No, that's not true. You're lying." "I wish I was lying, baby. I'm so sorry." "But we were supposed to see him," Fletcher said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "He said we'd have dinner soon. He promised. That promise was from 8 months ago. A promise Winston never kept." "I know, Fletcher. I know he promised." Ramona started crying. Not loud sobs, just silent tears streaming down her face. Fletcher sat perfectly still, his jaw clenched, refusing to cry. "Can we go to the funeral?" he asked. "I don't know yet." The lawyer said his wife is handling the arrangements. We should get an invitation in the next few days. "She won't let us come," Fletcher said bitterly. "Georgina hates us. She'll find a way to keep us out." "Fletcher, don't say that." "It's true, and you know it, Mom. She's the reason Dad stopped seeing us. She's the reason he broke his promises. And now she's going to make sure we can't even say goodbye." He stood up abruptly and walked out of the kitchen. I heard him running up the stairs. A moment later, his bedroom door slammed. Ramona looked at me with devastated eyes. "Is Fletcher right? Will Georgina keep us from the funeral?" "I don't know, sweetheart. But I promise you, I will do everything in my power to make sure you get to say goodbye to your father." It was a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. 3 days later, the formal notification arrived. Not a phone call, not a personal message, an email. "You are cordially invited to attend the memorial service for Winston Alexander Harrington, Saturday, November 18th at 10 a.m., Seaside Chapel, Montauk, New York." Cordially invited. Like we were distant acquaintances instead of his children, instead of the woman who'd spent 14 years of her life loving him. I showed the email to Fletcher and Ramona. "We're going," Fletcher said immediately. "I don't care what she says. We're going." "We'll all go," I assured them. "We'll get dressed up, and we'll go say goodbye to your dad properly." That Saturday morning, I woke up at 6 a.m., even though the service wasn't until 10. I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Winston, about the man he used to be before wealth and midlife crisis, and Georgina had changed him. I thought about our wedding day. We'd gotten married at a small courthouse in Manhattan. I wore a simple white dress from a department store. Winston wore his only suit. We had $17 between us, and dreams bigger than the city itself. He was building a software company from our garage apartment. I was supporting us with my job as a museum guide while finishing my art history degree. We were so young, 24 years old and absolutely certain that love was enough. "I'm going to build something amazing," Winston told me on our wedding night. We were eating takeout Chinese food on our apartment floor because we didn't own a table yet. "I'm going to create technology that changes how people work, and you're going to be beside me the whole time. I believe in you," I'd said. And I meant it. He did build something amazing. Harrington Technologies became one of the most successful software companies in the world, and I was beside him. For 14 years, I was beside him. Through the garage years and the first office and the expansion and the IPO, through the birth of our twins and the sleepless nights and the beautiful chaos of raising children while building an empire. I was beside him until suddenly I wasn't. Until the empire got so big that Winston couldn't see me anymore. Until he decided he needed something different, someone different. I got out of bed and went to wake the twins. Fletcher was already awake, sitting on his bed fully dressed in black pants and a white button-up shirt. He'd even attempted to tie a tie, though it was crooked. "Come here, let me fix that," I said. He stood and let me adjust his tie. As I worked, I noticed how tall he'd gotten. When did my little boy start looking so much like a young man? "Mom," he said quietly, "what if she really doesn't let us in? Then we'll figure something out. But Fletcher, no matter what happens today, I need you to remember something. Your father loved you. He made terrible mistakes, but he loved you. If he loved me, why did he leave?" It was the question he'd been asking for 3 years. The question I still didn't have a good answer for. "People are complicated, sweetheart. Sometimes they make choices that hurt the people they love. It doesn't mean the love wasn't real. That doesn't make sense. I know. Love doesn't always make sense. I went to Ramona's room next. She was sitting at her small desk, looking at a photograph. When I got closer, I saw it was a picture of her and Winston from 5 years ago. They were at a park, both holding ice cream cones and smiling at the camera. I was 7, Ramona said softly. Dad took me to get ice cream after my violin recital. He said I played like an angel. You did play like an angel. You still do. Do you think he ever came to my recitals after he left? Like, secretly in the back row? My heart broke. I don't know, baby. I always looked for him. Every single recital for the past 3 years, I looked to see if maybe he came. Get dressed, sweetheart. Let's go say goodbye. She put on a simple black dress. We'd bought it 3 days ago at a department store. It was too big, but it was all we could afford on short notice. I did my best to make it fit, pinning the back and adjusting the hem. I got dressed last. Black pants, black blazer, white blouse. Simple and respectful. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. I looked older than 39, tired, worn down by years of struggle and heartbreak. We got in my car just after 8 a.m. The drive from Brooklyn to Montauk would take about 2.5 hours. The service started at 10. We'd have just enough time. My car was a 12-year-old Honda sedan. It made concerning noises when I accelerated. The passenger side window didn't roll down all the way. The upholstery was torn in places, but it was paid off and it ran, and that was all that mattered. We drove in silence at first. Fletcher sat in the front passenger seat, staring out the window. Ramona was in the back, twisting her silver bracelet around and around her wrist. It was a nervous habit she'd developed over the past 3 years. Tell me a good memory, I said as we merged onto the highway. Tell me something happy about your dad. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Then Ramona said, Saturday morning pancakes. Tell me about it, I encouraged. Every Saturday when I was little before the divorce, Dad would make chocolate chip pancakes. He'd let me help crack the eggs, and he'd make silly faces with the chocolate chips on top, Mickey Mouse faces or smiley faces. Once he made a whole pancake portrait of me. He was terrible at portraits, Fletcher said, the hint of a smile on his face. That pancake looked nothing like you. It did too. It had my nose. It had a blob that was supposed to be your nose. They were smiling now, remembering. What about you, Fletcher? I asked. What's your good memory? The robotics workshop, he said. When I was 9, Dad took me to this weekend workshop at Columbia University. It was just me and him. We stayed in a hotel and ordered room service and built robots together. He wasn't good at it. I was better than him, actually. But he didn't care. He just laughed and let me show him how stuff worked. He was so proud of you, I said. He used to tell everyone that you were going to be an engineer. Did he know I won the citywide robotics competition last year? The question hung in the air. I didn't know if Winston had known. We weren't in contact anymore by then. I'm sure he knew, I said, though I wasn't sure at all. We drove on. Through Brooklyn, through Queens, onto Long Island. The landscape changed from city to suburb to small towns. The November sky was gray and heavy with clouds. As we got closer to Montauk, my anxiety grew. What would we find when we arrived? Would Georgina really try to keep the children from the funeral? Would there be a scene? Whatever happens, I said to Fletcher and Ramona, we stay calm and respectful. This is about saying goodbye to your father. That's all that matters. I hate her, Fletcher said quietly. I know, sweetheart. I hate what she did to Dad. I hate what she did to our family. I hate that she gets to decide whether we can go to the funeral. I know. I hate it too. We reached Montauk just before 9:45. The town was beautiful in that windswept coastal way. Boutique shops and seafood restaurants, beach houses on stilts, the ocean stretching endlessly to the horizon. The seaside chapel sat on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic. It was a gorgeous building, all white wood with a tall steeple and large windows facing the water. The kind of place you'd see in a magazine spread about dream weddings. The parking lot was already half full. Luxury cars everywhere. Mercedes, BMW, Tesla, Range Rovers. My little Honda sedan looked embarrassingly out of place. I parked as far from the entrance as possible. Ready? I asked. Fletcher and Ramona nodded. We got out of the car. The wind hit us immediately, sharp and cold and smelling of salt. Ramona shivered. Her dress was too thin for this weather. "Here, baby," I said, taking off my blazer and putting it around her shoulders. "But then you'll be cold." "I'll be fine." We walked across the parking lot toward the chapel. I could see people gathering near the entrance, men in expensive suits, women in designer black dresses. Everyone looked polished and wealthy and like they belonged in Winston's new world, a world that had never had room for me and the children. As we got closer, I recognized some faces. There was Richard Chen, Winston's business partner. There was Victoria Morrison, who served on the board of Harrington Technologies. There was David Park, Winston's college roommate turned chief financial officer. None of them looked at us. Or maybe they did look and quickly looked away, pretended not to see the ex-wife and the children who'd been erased from Winston's life. We reached the bottom of the chapel steps. About 70 people milled around, talking in low voices. Some were crying. Some were sharing stories. All of them were dressed in clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I took Fletcher's hand on my right and Ramona's hand on my left. "Together," I said. We started up the steps. We made it halfway before the chapel doors swung open, and she appeared. Georgina. She stood at the top of the steps like she was guarding the gates of heaven itself. 37 years old and absolutely stunning. Platinum blonde hair styled in perfect waves. A black designer dress that probably cost $5,000, fitted to showcase her thin frame. 4-inch heels, diamond earrings, dark sunglasses even though the sky was overcast. She looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Not like a grieving widow, like a model playing the role of grieving widow. Behind her, her friend Monica appeared. Short red hair, expensive clothes, the same cold expression. Georgina's head turned toward us. Even through the dark sunglasses, I could feel her eyes locking onto my children. She took 2 steps down the stairs. "Stop right there," she said. Her voice was loud, commanding. Everyone in the area stopped talking and turned to look. I froze on the steps. My children froze beside me. "I'm sorry," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Did you say something?" Georgina removed her sunglasses slowly, deliberately. Her blue eyes were ice cold. I said, "Stop. You 3 are not welcome here." The words hit me like a slap. Around us, people stared, whispered. Nobody intervened. "Georgina," I said carefully, "these are Winston's children. They have every right to be at their father's funeral." "Their father?" Georgina laughed. The sound was sharp and cruel. "Is that what you're calling him now? Where were these children when Winston was dying? Where were they when he was in pain, when he needed his family?" Ramona made a small, hurt sound. I squeezed her hand tighter. "You know exactly where they were," I said, "because you're the one who kept them away." "I kept them away?" Georgina's voice rose. "That's rich, Cassandra. Winston sent them away because they stressed him out, the constant noise, the demands, the drama. His doctor said he needed peace and quiet to have any chance of survival. He chose to send them to live with you because being around them was killing him." "That's a lie," Fletcher said. His voice shook, but he stood his ground. "That's a lie, and you know it." Georgina's eyes snapped to him. "Excuse me? Are you calling me a liar, child?" "Don't talk to my son," I said, stepping slightly in front of Fletcher. "Your son who abandoned his dying father, your daughter who couldn't be bothered to visit. These children made Winston's life hell, and now they show up here expecting to be welcomed? This is a funeral for family, for people who actually cared about Winston, not for the people who walked away." Tears streamed down Ramona's face. She was shaking. "Please," Ramona whispered. "Please, we just want to say goodbye." "You had 3 years to say goodbye," Georgina said coldly. "You chose not to. You chose to make Winston's last years miserable with your absence and your guilt trips and your constant demands for attention. I felt my control slipping. 3 years of watching this woman manipulate my ex-husband. 3 years of watching her poison his relationship with his children. 3 years of keeping silent because I didn't want to make things worse. All of it bubbled up in my throat. "How dare you?" I said. My voice was low but fierce. "How dare you stand there and rewrite history? You know exactly what you did. You systematically cut these children out of Winston's life. You manufactured crises every time he tried to see them. You monitored his phone calls. You rushed visits short. You made him choose between you and his children, and you made sure he chose you. I saved Winston from the stress that was killing him, Georgina shot back. I gave him peace in his final years. I was there when he needed someone. Where were you, Cassandra? Oh, that's right. You were the ex-wife he couldn't wait to get away from. Monica stepped forward next to Georgina. You need to leave, Monica said. This is inappropriate. You're making a scene at a funeral. We're making a scene? I couldn't believe this. You're the ones blocking children from their father's funeral. These are not his children anymore, Georgina said. Not where it matters. Winston's real family is inside, the people who stood by him, the people who loved him. You three are nothing but painful reminders of a past he wanted to forget. Ramona sobbed openly now. Fletcher's face had gone completely white. He looked like he might be sick. I turned to the crowd of people watching. Surely someone would speak up. Surely someone would defend us. I saw Richard Chen standing near the chapel wall. He'd known Fletcher since he was a baby. I looked right at him. Richard, please, tell her this is wrong. Richard looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked down at his shoes and said nothing. I turned to Victoria Morrison. Victoria, you know these children. You came to their birthday parties. Please. Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. She looked away. Nobody spoke up. Nobody defended us. They all just stood there, uncomfortable but silent. Georgina smiled. It was a cold, victorious smile. You see, she said, nobody wants you here. Leave now, or I will call the police and have you removed for trespassing. This is a church, I said desperately. You can't trespass in a church. This is a private funeral on private property. I can absolutely have you removed. She pulled out her phone. Shall I make the call? I looked at my children. Fletcher was trying so hard to be strong, but his chin trembled. Ramona had buried her face against my side, her whole body shaking with sobs. I couldn't put them through this. I couldn't let them be dragged out by police. The humiliation was already too much. Come on, babies, I said quietly. Let's go. No, Fletcher said. No, Mom, we can't just leave. We don't have a choice, sweetheart. But Dad's in there. We have to say goodbye. I know, baby. I turned us around, started walking back down the steps. It was the longest walk of my life. Behind us, I heard Georgina's voice. Finally. Now we can have a proper service, a service for people who actually mattered to Winston. The crowd began moving up the steps, filing past Georgina into the chapel. Every single person walking through those doors was someone who got to say goodbye to Winston. Every single person except his own children. We reached the bottom of the steps. I looked around desperately. There had to be something we could do, some way to fix this. But there was nothing. Georgina held all the power. I led Fletcher and Ramona across the parking lot. We didn't go to our car. I couldn't bear to drive away yet. Instead, I walked to the edge of the parking lot, where a low stone wall separated the property from the cliff beyond. We sat down on the cold stone. The ocean crashed against the rocks below us. The wind whipped our hair and stung our faces. People were still arriving, still walking past us into the chapel. Nobody stopped to ask if we were okay. Ramona leaned against me and cried. Fletcher sat rigid and angry on my other side. I put my arms around both of them and held them as tightly as I could. I'm so sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry, babies. Why does she hate us so much? Ramona asked through her tears. What did we do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. Nothing. This is about her, not you. But we were good kids, Ramona continued. We tried to be quiet when we visited Dad. We tried not to make him tired. We tried so hard. I know you did, baby. I know. This isn't fair, Fletcher said. His voice was hard, angry. Dad was our father. We should be in there. You're right. It's not fair. Sometimes life isn't fair, and sometimes bad people get what they want. So she just wins? She gets to keep us away from Dad even when he's dead? I didn't have an answer for that. Through the chapel windows, we could hear the service beginning. Organ music drifted out on the wind. Then a voice, the priest, I assumed, beginning the funeral. We are gathered here today to celebrate the life of Winston Alexander Harrington. Fletcher flinched like he'd been hit. A man of vision, a man of accomplishment, a man who touched countless lives with his generosity and brilliance. Ramona's sobs got louder. I closed my eyes and tried to figure out what to do. Should we leave? Should we stay? What was the right choice here? Then I heard it. A car engine, growing closer. I opened my eyes and saw a black town car pulling into the parking lot. It was sleek and expensive looking, the kind of car a CEO would drive. The car parked near the chapel entrance. The engine turned off. The driver's side door opened. A man stepped out, tall, late 60s, silver hair, sharp charcoal suit, expensive leather briefcase in hand. He had the bearing of someone important, someone used to being listened to. He looked around the parking lot, his gaze sweeping across the luxury vehicles. Then his eyes landed on us, 3 people sitting on a stone wall clearly in distress. He stared at us for a long moment. Then he started walking, not toward the chapel, toward us. Fletcher noticed him approaching. "Mom, someone's coming." I looked up. The silver-haired man crossed the parking lot with purposeful strides. His face was serious, but not unkind. He stopped a few feet from where we sat. "Excuse me," he said. His voice was cultured, professional. "Are you Cassandra Wilder?" I stood up quickly, wiping my face. "Yes, I'm Cassandra. Who are you?" The man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. He handed it to me. "Theodore Beaumont, attorney at law, Beaumont and Associates." "You called me," I said, "about Winston's death." "Yes." "I'm very sorry we had to meet under these circumstances." His eyes moved to Fletcher and Ramona. "These must be Fletcher and Ramona." Both children nodded. "Mr. Harrington spoke of you often," Beaumont said gently. "He was very proud of you both." "Then why did he leave us?" Ramona asked. The question came out broken and desperate. Something shifted in Beaumont's expression. Pain, anger, determination. "Why are you sitting out here?" Beaumont asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "The service is inside. That woman won't let us in," Fletcher said bitterly. "Georgina. She says we're not welcome." Beaumont's jaw tightened. His eyes went cold. "She said that. She actually said that to you." "She said a lot worse than that," I said. "She said Winston sent the children away because they stressed him out. She said they abandoned him. She called them painful reminders of a past he wanted to forget. Then she threatened to call the police if we didn't leave." Beaumont's hand gripped his briefcase so tightly his knuckles went white. "Mrs. Wilder, I need you and the children to wait here just a little bit longer. Can you do that for me?" "Why?" "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to do what Winston asked me to do. I'm going to make sure justice is served." "I don't understand." Beaumont's face was grim but determined. "Your ex-husband knew exactly what kind of person Georgina was. He made very specific arrangements before he died. Arrangements to protect his children and expose the truth." Hope flickered in my chest for the first time that morning. "What kind of arrangements?" "You'll see very soon. Winston changed his will 6 months ago. He gave me explicit instructions about when and where to read it." "When?" I asked. "Today. Right now. At the funeral. In front of everyone." Ramona looked up with red, swollen eyes. "Does that mean we can go inside?" "Very soon, sweetheart. Very soon. First, I need to do something. Wait here. I promise you, everything is about to change." Beaumont turned and strode toward the chapel. He climbed the steps quickly, confidently. He pushed open the doors and disappeared inside. We heard his footsteps echoing in the chapel. Then the organ music stopped. Then Father O'Brien's voice stopped mid-sentence. Then we heard Theodore Beaumont's voice, clear and strong. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. My name is Theodore Beaumont, and I am the attorney for the late Winston Harrington. I have a legal obligation to read his last will and testament at this time, as he specifically requested." Inside the chapel, someone shouted. It sounded like Georgina. Her voice was high and angry. "What's happening?" Ramona whispered. "I think," I said slowly, "your father is about to save you one last time." A second vehicle pulled into the parking lot. A police car. 2 officers got out. A large man with a serious face and a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes. They walked quickly toward the chapel entrance and went inside. Fletcher grabbed my hand. "Mom, are those cops?" "Yes, baby." "Why are there cops at a funeral?" "I don't know, but I think we're about to find out." We couldn't see what was happening inside, but we could hear voices rising. Georgina shouting. Beaumont's calm responses. Then a new voice. Professional, authoritative. One of the police officers. "Ma'am, you need to sit down and let the attorney do his job." More shouting from Georgina. Then silence. Then Beaumont's voice again, reading from a document. I, Winston Alexander Harrington, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. Fletcher, Ramona, and I sat frozen on that stone wall, listening to words drift out through the chapel windows. I leave my entire estate to my children, Michael Robert Davis and Maya Elizabeth Davis. Wait. That wasn't right. Those weren't my children's names. No. Beaumont was reading from the wrong document, or maybe he had multiple wills to read. That must be it. To be held in trust until they reach the age of 25, Beaumont continued. My estate includes the following assets. First, the penthouse residence at 212 Central Park West. I realized my mistake. He was reading Winston's will. He just read the wrong names. Or maybe I'd misheard. Second, the beach house at 47 Dune Road, Montauk. Third, the property at 15 Aspen Mountain Road, Aspen, Colorado. Fourth, the yacht Heritage, currently docked at the Montauk Yacht Club. Through the window, I could see Georgina standing. Her silhouette was rigid, tense. Fifth, all shares and holdings in Harrington Technologies, currently valued at approximately $2.3 billion. Gasps echoed from inside the chapel. $2.3 billion. I had known Winston was successful, but I hadn't realized the company had grown that large. Sixth, all liquid assets, bonds, and investment portfolios held in my name. Seventh, all vehicles registered to me. Eighth, all personal property, artwork, and collectibles. Beaumont paused. Then his voice continued, softer now. To my ex-wife, Cassandra Wilder, I leave a trust fund of $50 million, as compensation for the years of devotion she gave me and as gratitude for raising our children to be good, kind humans. I also leave her the brownstone property in Brooklyn where she currently resides, with all mortgages satisfied. Tears blurred my vision. The brownstone. Winston had kept it in the divorce, and I'd been renting it from him for 6 years. Always one bad month away from losing it. And now, it was mine, free and clear. To my wife, Georgina Harrington, Beaumont read, and his voice cooled noticeably. I leave nothing. Even from outside, we heard the chapel erupt. People gasping, exclaiming, turning to each other in shock. Georgina's scream cut through everything. That's impossible. That's a lie. Winston would never do that to me. Mrs. Harrington, Beaumont's calm voice responded, this will was executed 6 months ago. It was signed in my office in the presence of 3 witnesses and notarized according to New York state law. I don't care. Winston wasn't in his right mind. He was sick. He was manipulated. Actually, Mrs. Harrington, Mr. Harrington was evaluated by 3 separate physicians before executing this will. All 3 confirmed he was of sound mind and clear judgment. Their signed statements are attached to the will. This is insane. I'm his wife. I have rights. You do have rights, Mrs. Harrington. You have the right to contest the will if you choose. However, I should inform you that Mr. Harrington anticipated such action. He left a letter to be read at this service, a letter explaining his decisions. No, Georgina said. Her voice cracked. No, you can't read that. I'm afraid I must. It was Mr. Harrington's explicit wish. Ramona looked at me with huge eyes. Mommy, what's happening? I hadn't heard her call me Mommy in years, only when she was scared or very young. I think your father left you everything, baby. I think he made sure you were protected. But the lawyers said different names, Michael and Maya. I think I misheard, sweetheart. But I hadn't misheard. I was certain of it. Beaumont had said Michael Robert Davis and Maya Elizabeth Davis, not Fletcher Winston Harrington and Ramona Elizabeth Harrington. Unless that story I'd written, that reimagining of another family's tragedy, had somehow bled into my consciousness. Unless I was confusing stories in my grief. I shook my head. Focus, Cassandra. Focus on what's happening now. Inside the chapel, Beaumont was speaking again. The letter reads as follows. To my beloved children, Fletcher and Ramona. There. He said their names correctly this time. I had been confused. If you are hearing this, then I have run out of time. Time to explain. Time to fix my mistakes. Time to be the father you deserved. Ramona started crying again. But these tears were different. Softer. More bittersweet than anguished. 3 years ago, I made the worst decision of my life. I left your mother, a woman of integrity, intelligence, and grace, for Georgina. I was flattered by her attention. I was going through a crisis, feeling old and obsolete as the tech world moved faster than I could keep up. Georgina made me feel young and relevant. She was beautiful and exciting, and I was a fool. Murmurs rippled through the chapel. I could imagine the faces, the shock, the gossip that would spread through Manhattan society. Within months of our marriage, I began to see the truth. Georgina wasn't interested in me. She was interested in my money, my status, my connections. She began controlling my schedule, my communications, my access to you. Every time I planned to see you, she manufactured a crisis. Every time I wanted to call, she reminded me of some urgent meeting or event. Fletcher gripped my hand so tightly it hurt. I was weak. I let her manipulate me. I told myself it was easier to go along, to avoid conflict. But 6 months ago, something happened that opened my eyes completely. Beaumont paused. The chapel was completely silent. I hired a private investigator, not to follow Georgina, but to protect my company from a potential data breach. What the investigator found instead was evidence of Georgina's affair with her personal trainer, Kyle Morrison. Chaos erupted inside the chapel, people shouting, chairs scraping, Georgina screaming denials, and another voice, a man's voice, younger, panicked. We didn't. This is crazy. Kyle, her lover. He was inside the chapel. The investigator provided me with photos, videos, hotel receipts. Beaumont continued reading over the noise. Credit card statements showing thousands of dollars spent on gifts for her lover. All my money. All while she played the devoted wife. Lies. Georgina shrieked. All lies. But even that wasn't the worst discovery, Beaumont read. The chapel fell silent again, waiting. The investigator also uncovered communications between Georgina and Kyle. Communications discussing ways to accelerate my death. Horror rippled through the crowd, through me, through everything. No, I whispered. Communications discussing increasing my blood pressure medication to dangerous levels, discussing staging an accident, discussing how they would split my fortune once I was gone. The chapel exploded again. But this time it was different. This time it was outrage, disgust, demands for justice. We stood up from the stone wall, started walking toward the chapel. We had to see this, had to witness it. As we approached, the chapel doors opened. The female police officer stepped out, and she wasn't alone. She had Georgina by the arm. Georgina's perfect facade had completely shattered. Her makeup was smeared. Her hair was disheveled. Her face was red and twisted with rage and fear. Behind them, the male officer emerged with a young man, mid-30s, handsome in a generic way, wearing an expensive suit that Georgina had probably bought him with Winston's money. Kyle. The officers were reading them their rights. Georgina Harrington, Kyle Morrison, you're being detained for questioning in connection with the death of Winston Harrington. This is insane. Georgina screamed. I didn't kill him. He had a heart attack. His doctor said he had a heart attack. That's what we're going to investigate, ma'am. Another person emerged from the chapel. A woman in her 50s wearing a medical examiner's badge. Mr. Harrington did die of cardiac arrest, she said, her voice professional and clear. However, the autopsy I performed revealed unusually high levels of certain medications in his system, levels inconsistent with his prescriptions, levels that suggest possible deliberate overdose. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office has opened a formal investigation into the possibility of homicide. Georgina saw us standing there, saw Fletcher and Ramona and me watching her downfall, her face contorted with pure hatred. This is your fault, she hissed at us. You poisoned him against me. You manipulated him into changing the will. We haven't seen Winston in 8 months, I said quietly. You made sure of that. I'll fight this, Georgina snarled as the officer guided her toward the police car. I'll contest the will. I'll prove Winston was incompetent. I'll take everything. You have nothing left to take, Theodore Beaumont's voice said from behind us. He'd emerged from the chapel. In his hand, he held a thick folder of documents. Winston spent 6 months documenting everything, Mrs. Harrington. Every manipulation, every lie, every dollar you spent on your affair, every communication about ending his life. He worked with me to ensure that when he was gone, his children would be protected and you would face justice. The police car doors closed. Georgina and Kyle sat in the back seat, separated by a barrier. Through the window, I could see Georgina's mouth moving, still screaming, though we couldn't hear the words anymore. The police cars pulled away, drove out of the parking lot. disappeared down the coastal road. And just like that, she was gone. The crowd from the chapel had spilled out onto the steps and lawn, 60 people staring at us, whispering, processing what they'd just witnessed. Theodore Beaumont approached Fletcher and Ramona. He knelt down so he was at their eye level. "Your father loved you very much," he said gently. "He made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but in the end he made sure you would be safe. He made sure the truth would come out. He protected you the only way he could." "Can we see him now?" Ramona asked. Her voice was small and broken. "Can we say goodbye to our dad?" Beaumont's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, sweetheart, of course you can. That's why you're here." He stood and offered his hand to Ramona. She took it. Fletcher took my hand. Together, the four of us walked up the chapel steps. The crowd parted for us. Some people looked ashamed, some looked sympathetic, some just looked shocked. We walked through the doors into the chapel. It was beautiful inside, all white wood and soft light, large windows overlooking the ocean, and at the front, surrounded by white roses, was Winston's casket, my ex-husband, the father of my children, the man who'd broken my heart and then, in death, tried to mend it. We walked down the aisle slowly. Every step echoed on the wooden floor. People in the pews watched us pass. Some reached out to touch Fletcher's shoulder or squeeze my arm, offering comfort now that it was safe to do so. Father O'Brien stood near the altar. He was an older man with kind eyes and white hair. When we reached the front, he stepped forward. "Cassandra," he said softly. "Fletcher, Ramona, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry for what happened outside. It was wrong, deeply wrong." "Thank you, Father," I managed. He gestured toward the casket. "Please, take all the time you need." The casket was open. I could see Winston's profile from where we stood, but I held back, letting the children go first. Fletcher and Ramona approached their father's casket together. They were holding hands. They looked down at him, and I watched their faces crumple. "Hi, Dad," Fletcher whispered. He reached out and placed his hand on the edge of the casket. Ramona did the same. "We missed you," Ramona said. "We missed you so much." I stood a few steps behind, giving them space. Tears streamed down my face, but I let them fall. After 3 years of being strong, of holding it together, of putting on a brave face for my children, I finally let myself break. "I won the robotics competition," Fletcher told his father's still form, the citywide one. "I built an autonomous vehicle that could navigate obstacle courses. It was really cool, Dad. I wish you could have seen it. I'm in the advanced music program at school," Ramona added, "for violin. Remember how you used to say I played like an angel? My teacher says the same thing. I have a solo in the winter concert. I was going to invite you." Her voice broke on the last word. "We forgive you, Daddy," she whispered. "We know Georgina lied. We know you loved us. We forgive you for everything." Fletcher nodded, unable to speak. I stepped forward then, placed my hands on my children's shoulders, looked down at Winston's face for the first time in 8 months. He looked peaceful, younger somehow than the last time I'd seen him. The lines of stress and illness had been smoothed away. He wore a dark suit. His hands were folded on his chest. He looked like he was sleeping. "We'll be okay, Winston," I whispered. "I promise you, I'll take care of them. I'll make sure they know the best parts of you. I'll make sure they understand that people can be flawed and still love deeply. Rest now. You're finally free." We stood there for a long time, the three of us and Winston, a family fractured and broken, and somehow in this moment whole again. Behind us, the chapel had filled with quiet, respectful, giving us the space we'd been denied. Finally, Fletcher stepped back. "Goodbye, Dad," he said. "I love you." "I love you too, Daddy," Ramona echoed. "Forever." They turned away from the casket. I pulled them both into a hug, holding them as they cried against me. Theodore Beaumont approached quietly. "Mrs. Wilder, there are some people here who'd like to speak with you. If you're ready." I nodded and turned. A woman stood nearby. She was in her early 70s, elegant and dignified, with silver hair and the same green eyes as Winston. "As my children." "Cassandra," she said. Her voice shook with emotion. "I'm Adelaide Harrington. Winston's mother. I'd met her only a handful of times during my marriage. Winston's relationship with his parents had been complicated. They'd lived in Europe for most of the twins' lives. I hadn't even known she was still alive. Mrs. Harrington, I said carefully. Please, call me Adelaide. She looked at Fletcher and Ramona with tears streaming down her face. My grandchildren. Oh my God, look how you've grown. Hello, grandmother, Fletcher said formally. Adelaide's face crumpled. I should have been here, she said. For all of you. Winston and I had our differences, but that's no excuse for abandoning my grandchildren. I failed you. I failed all of you. Why weren't you here? Ramona asked. Not accusatory, just genuinely curious. Pride, stubbornness, all the wrong reasons. Adelaide wiped her eyes. When Winston divorced your mother and married that woman, I told him he was making a mistake. We fought. He told me to. Stay out of his life. And I did. I honored his wishes and stayed away. But I should have fought harder. I should have insisted on being part of your lives. She looked at me then. May I have a relationship with them now, please? I know I have no right to ask, but I'm asking anyway. I want to know my grandchildren. I want to be the grandmother I should have been all along. I looked at Fletcher and Ramona. It's up to you two, I said. They exchanged glances. Some wordless twin communication passed between them. Then they both nodded. We'd like that, Fletcher said. Adelaide made a sound between a laugh and a sob. She opened her arms hesitantly, and after a moment, both children stepped into her embrace. Thank you, Adelaide whispered. Thank you. Other people approached then. Richard Chen, looking ashamed. Cassandra, Fletcher, Ramona, he said. I'm so sorry. I should have spoken up outside. I should have defended you. I was a coward. Yes, I said simply. You were. He flinched, but nodded. Winston talked about you all the time, Richard said to the twins. He showed me pictures. He told me about your robotics competitions and your music performances. He was so proud of you. He just didn't know how to break free from Georgina's control. Why didn't you tell us? Fletcher asked. Why didn't you tell us he still cared? Because I'm a coward, Richard repeated. And I'm sorry. Victoria Morrison approached next. I knew something was wrong, she said. I knew Georgina was manipulating him, but I didn't want to get involved. I told myself it wasn't my business. I'm sorry. One by one, people came forward, offering condolences, offering apologies, offering support now that it was safe to do so. Some of them I accepted. Some I couldn't. Not yet. Father O'Brien eventually suggested we complete the funeral service. We sat in the front pew, where we should have been all along. Adelaide sat with us. Theodore Beaumont sat nearby. The service was beautiful. People shared memories of Winston, stories about his brilliance, his kindness, his vision. Some mentioned his love for his children, how he'd shown them pictures and talked about Fletcher's science projects and Ramona's music. It hurt, hearing how much he'd cared from a distance. But it also helped, knowing his love had been real, even when he was too weak to show it properly. After the service ended, people filed out slowly. Many stopped to hug us or shake our hands. Some pressed business cards into my palm, offering legal help or financial advice, or just their phone numbers if we needed anything. When almost everyone had left, Theodore Beaumont approached with his briefcase. Mrs. Wilder, I'd like to schedule a meeting with you next week to go over the estate in detail. There's a great deal to discuss. Of course, thank you, Mr. Beaumont, for everything. Please, call me Theodore. He smiled sadly. Winston was my friend for 15 years. I made him a promise that I would protect his children if anything happened to him. I intend to keep that promise. Did you know? I asked. About Georgina? About what she was doing? Not the full extent, but I suspected. 6 months ago, Winston came to my office. He looked terrible, thin and pale and exhausted. He told me he'd discovered evidence that his wife was having an affair and possibly worse. He showed me communications between Georgina and her lover discussing his wealth, his health, how long they might have to wait for him to die naturally. Theodore's jaw clenched. I advised him to go to the police immediately, but he was afraid. Georgina had isolated him so completely that he worried no one would believe him. He worried she would spin it as dementia or paranoia from his illness. So instead, we worked together to build an airtight case, documentation, witness statements, medical evaluations proving his competency, a will so legally sound that it couldn't be contested. And the letter? Ramona asked. He wrote that himself, every word. It took him 3 hours, His hand was shaking so badly from his illness that some parts are almost illegible, but he insisted on writing it by hand. He said it needed to be personal, from his heart. "Can we keep it?" Fletcher asked. "The letter? It's yours," Theodore said. "Everything he left behind is yours." We said our goodbyes and walked out of the chapel into the gray afternoon. The crowd had dispersed. The parking lot was nearly empty. Just our car, Theodore's town car, and Adelaide's Mercedes. Adelaide approached us. "May I take you to lunch?" she asked. "There's a lovely restaurant nearby. We could talk, get to know each other properly." I looked at the twins. They looked exhausted, but also hopeful. "I think we'd like that," I said. We followed Adelaide's car to a small seafood restaurant overlooking the harbor. The hostess seated us at a table by the window. We ordered food none of us had much appetite for, and we talked. Adelaide told us about Winston as a boy, how he'd been brilliant but insecure, how he'd always felt the need to prove himself, how he'd built his company as much to earn his father's approval as anything else. She told us about her regrets, how she wished she'd fought harder to be part of our lives, how she'd watched from a distance as Winston's marriage to Georgina had deteriorated his relationships with everyone else. "I tried calling him," Adelaide said, "several times over the past 3 years. Georgina always answered, always had an excuse for why Winston couldn't come to the phone. Eventually I stopped trying. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I stopped trying." "We did the same thing," I confessed. After the 8th month of being told he was too tired, or too busy, or too sick to see the children, I stopped pushing. I thought maybe it was better to let him have peace rather than stress him out with our presence. "Georgina was very good at manipulation," Adelaide said. "She knew exactly how to use people's love and concern against them." "What will happen to her?" Ramona asked. "Will she go to jail?" "If the investigation proves what Winston suspected, yes," I said. "She'll go to prison for a very long time." "Good," Fletcher said fiercely. "She deserves it." Nobody argued with him. We finished our meal and exchanged contact information. Adelaide made us promise to call her, to visit, to let her be part of our lives going forward. "I have so many years to make up for," she said. "I don't expect you to forgive me immediately, but I hope in time we can build something real." "We'd like that," I said honestly. The drive back to Brooklyn was quiet. The twins fell asleep in the car, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of the day. I drove through the fading afternoon light, processing everything that had happened. Winston was gone. Georgina was facing justice. My children were protected and provided for. Everything had changed in the span of a few hours. When we got home to our brownstone, our home that was now truly ours, I helped the sleepy twins upstairs. Fletcher went to his room without a word. Ramona paused at her door. "Mom?" she said. "Yes, baby. Do you think Dad knew what would happen today? Do you think he planned for us to see Georgina arrested?" "I thought about it. I think your father wanted to make sure the truth came out. I think he wanted to protect you from her. Whether he knew exactly how it would play out, I don't know, but he made sure you'd be safe." "I'm glad," Ramona said. "I'm glad everyone knows what she did." She went into her room and closed the door softly. I went to my own room and sat on the edge of my bed. I pulled out the business card Theodore Beaumont had given me, stared at it. $50 million. A trust fund for me, and everything else for the twins. Money wouldn't bring Winston back. It wouldn't erase the 3 years of pain and alienation. It wouldn't give my children back the time they'd lost with their father. But it would give us security, options, freedom. I thought about going back to school, finishing my art history degree that I'd abandoned when the twins were born, maybe teaching, maybe opening a small gallery. The future suddenly felt open in a way it hadn't in years. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Wilder, this is Theodore Beaumont. I wanted to make sure you and the children arrived home safely. Please don't hesitate to call if you need anything. Also, I'm emailing you Winston's letter. He wanted you to have a copy as well. Take care." A moment later, my email notification chimed. I opened it. There was the letter. Winston's handwriting, shaky but determined. His final words to our children. And below it, another attachment. A letter addressed to me. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Dearest Cassandra, if you're reading this, then Theodore has done what I asked and revealed the truth about Georgina. I hope my children are with you. I hope they're safe. I hope they can forgive me. I need you to know something. Leaving you was the worst mistake of my life. Every day since our divorce, I've regretted it. Every night I've thought about what I destroyed. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was built on genuine love and partnership. What I had with Georgina was an illusion, a fantasy I mistook for something real. By the time I realized my mistake, I was trapped. Georgina had isolated me so completely that I didn't know how to break free. She controlled my schedule, monitored my communications, manufactured crises whenever I tried to see Fletcher and Ramona. I was weak and sick, and I let her win. But 6 months ago, I decided enough was enough. I couldn't force her out of my life without proof of her betrayal. I couldn't bring the children home without first ensuring they'd be protected from her. So I worked with Theodore to build a case, to document everything, to ensure that when I was gone, the truth would come out and our children would be safe. I know this is too little, too late. I know money and property don't make up for lost time, but it's all I have left to give. Cassandra, you are an extraordinary woman. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. You deserved a partner who appreciated your strength, your intelligence, your grace. Instead, you got a coward who ran away when things got difficult. I hope you'll find happiness again. Real happiness, with someone who sees your worth and never takes it for granted. Take care of our children. I know you will. You always have. With love and regret, Winston. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded my laptop closed and lay back on my bed. The tears came then. Not angry tears or grieving tears. Something more complex. Tears for what was lost. Tears for what might have been. Tears for a good man who'd made terrible choices and tried, in the end, to make them right. I forgive you, Winston, I whispered to the empty room. I forgive you, and I meant it. The morning after the funeral, I woke up to silence. It was the kind of silence that feels heavy, significant, like the world had shifted overnight and was waiting to see what we'd do next. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. The brownstone creaked around me, familiar sounds in what was now truly our home. No landlord, no mortgage payments looming, just ours. My phone had 17 missed calls, news outlets, reporters who'd somehow gotten my number. I deleted the voicemails without listening. At 8:30, Fletcher came downstairs. His eyes were red and puffy, but he'd gotten dressed. Black jeans and a hoodie. He looked older than 12. Grief does that to children. Morning, Mom. Morning, baby. You want breakfast? Not really hungry. He sat down across from me anyway. We sat in silence for a few minutes. So we're rich now, Fletcher finally said. Your father left you and your sister very well provided for, yes. Billions of dollars. That's what the lawyer said. 2.3 billion. That money is in a trust. You won't have full access until you're 25, but yes, it's there for you. Fletcher picked at a scratch on the table surface. Does that make us bad people, getting rich because Dad died? Oh, sweetheart, no. You didn't want your father to die. You would give every penny back to have him alive and healthy, wouldn't you? Yeah. I would. Then no, it doesn't make you bad people. Your father worked very hard to build his company. He wanted to make sure you were taken care of. That's what parents do. Did you know? Fletcher asked. About Georgina trying to kill him? No, I had no idea. I knew she was manipulative and cruel. I knew she was isolating your father from everyone who loved him. But murder? I never suspected that. Do you think she really did it? Or do you think maybe Dad was just paranoid because he was sick? I considered the question carefully. Fletcher deserved honesty. I think the investigation will determine the truth. But your father was examined by 3 doctors who all said he was mentally competent. He hired a private investigator who found actual evidence. Text messages, plans. So yes, I think she probably did exactly what he suspected. Fletcher's hands clenched into fists. I hate her. Is that wrong, to hate someone this much? No, baby, it's not wrong. What she did was hateful. She deserves your anger. But you always say hate is bad. You say it poisons the person who feels it. I do say that, and it's true. Hating Georgina won't hurt her. She's already going to face consequences for what she did. Your hate will only hurt you. But feeling that hate right now, that's normal, that's human. You don't have to forgive her. You just eventually have to let go of carrying that anger around like a weight. How do I do that? Time, therapy, talking about it. We'll figure it out together. Ramona came downstairs then. She wore pajamas and had dark circles under her eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept at all. "Morning, Mona," I said gently. She didn't respond, just went to the refrigerator, poured herself orange juice, and sat down at the table. "You okay, sweetheart?" I asked. "No." Her voice was flat. "I'm not okay. My dad is dead. The woman he married tried to murder him. Everyone knows our business. Reporters are calling. Kids at school are going to ask questions. Nothing is okay." "You're right. I'm sorry. That was a stupid question." We sat in heavy silence. Three people who'd been through hell and had no idea what came next. My phone rang. "Theodore Beaumont." "Excuse me," I said to the twins. "I need to take this." I walked into the living room. "Hello, Theodore." "Good morning, Cassandra. I'm sorry to call so early. I wanted to check in. How are you all doing?" "We're processing. It's a lot. I can imagine. Listen, I need to give you some information. The district attorney's office contacted me this morning. They've formally charged Georgina Harrington and Kyle Morrison with conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder." My stomach dropped. Attempted murder? So they have proof she actually tried to kill him? The medical examiner found evidence of medication tampering. Winston's blood pressure medication had been altered. Pills that should have contained 20 milligrams contained 80, enough to cause the heart attack that killed him. Oh my God. Pharmacy records show that Georgina picked up his prescriptions. Text messages between her and Kyle discuss the dosage changes. The DA believes they have enough for a conviction. What happens now? Arraignment is Monday. They'll likely deny bail given the severity of the charges. Then the case will go to trial. It could take months, maybe a year. Will the children have to testify? No. The evidence is strong enough without their testimony, but the trial will be public. There will be media coverage. You should prepare them for that. How do I prepare 12-year-olds for watching their stepmother on trial for murdering their father? I don't know, Theodore admitted, but I can recommend an excellent therapist who specializes in childhood trauma. Would you like her contact information? Yes, please. He gave me the name and number. Dr. Lauren Pierce, offices at Nationwide Children's Hospital in Manhattan. Thank you, Theodore. Of course. One more thing. I'd like to schedule a meeting with you next week to go over Winston's estate in detail. We need to discuss the trust, structure, the management of his properties, the operation of Harrington Technologies while Fletcher and Ramona are minors. There's a great deal to cover. Okay. When? Tuesday afternoon, 2 o'clock at my office. I'll be there. After we hung up, I stood in the living room staring at nothing. Georgina had actually done it. She'd actually murdered Winston. I thought about the man I'd married, the young, ambitious dreamer who'd worked 18-hour days to build something from nothing, who'd held our babies in the hospital with tears streaming down his face, who'd taught Fletcher to ride a bike and had tea parties with Ramona. That man had died alone, poisoned by a woman he'd trusted, a woman he'd chosen over his family. The injustice of it burned in my chest. I called Dr. Lauren Pierce and scheduled appointments for all three of us. Individual sessions for Fletcher and Ramona. Family sessions for all of us together, starting next week. Then I went back to the kitchen where my children sat in miserable silence. That was Theodore, I said. Georgina and Kyle have been formally charged with your father's murder. Fletcher looked up sharply. So, it's real. She really did it. Yes, baby. She really did. Good, he said fiercely. I hope she goes to prison forever. The trial will be public, I continued. There will be news coverage. People at school might ask questions or say things. We need to prepare for that. Can we not go to school? Ramona asked. Please. I can't face everyone right now. You can take the rest of this week off. But next week, we need to try to get back to normal routines. Nothing's ever going to be normal again, Ramona said. She wasn't wrong. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, legal documents, and media circus. News vans parked outside our brownstone. Reporters knocked on our door. Neighbors we barely knew suddenly wanted to talk, to offer condolences, to get the inside story they could sell to tabloids. I kept the curtains closed, didn't answer the door, protected my children the only way I could. Adelaide called every day, sometimes twice a day, checking in, offering support. On Wednesday, she drove to Brooklyn and brought groceries, home-cooked meals, and genuine concern. How were they really doing? She asked when the twins were upstairs. Ramona cries herself to sleep every night. Fletcher hasn't cried at all since the funeral. He's holding everything inside. I'm terrified about what happens when he finally breaks. And you, how are you doing? I don't know. I loved Winston once. I divorced him. I was angry at him for years, but I never wanted this. I never wanted him dead. Of course you didn't. You're a good person, Cassandra. Better than my son deserved, honestly. He wasn't always bad. The man I married was good. Flawed, but good. Adelaide's eyes filled with tears. I failed him. His father and we pushed him so hard, always demanding more success, more achievement, more proof that he was worthy. We created this need in him to prove himself. That need made him vulnerable to someone like Georgina. You can't blame yourself for her evil. No. But I can acknowledge my part in creating the circumstances that led him to her. She stayed for dinner. We ate Adelaide's homemade lasagna and tried to talk about normal things. School, hobbies, anything but death and trials and murder. It almost worked. Monday morning came, arraignment day. Theodore called to update me. Georgina and Kyle had both pled not guilty. Bail was denied. They'd be held at Rikers Island until trial. The judge called the evidence compelling and the defendants a flight risk, Theodore said. Given their financial resources and the severity of the charges, he wasn't taking chances. How did Georgina react? About how you'd expect. Screaming, crying, claiming she's innocent. Her lawyer tried to argue that she's a grieving widow being railroaded by a vindictive ex-wife and greedy children. Excuse me? His exact words were that you manipulated Winston while he was dying and turned him against his loving wife. Rage flooded through me. Hot and fierce. That's absurd. I hadn't seen Winston in 8 months. Georgina made sure of that. I know. The judge knew too. He shut down that line of argument immediately, told Georgina's lawyer to save it for trial and stick to the bail hearing. It didn't go well for her. Good. Cassandra, I need to warn you. This is going to get ugly. Georgina's defense will likely try to paint you as the villain. They'll dig into your past, your marriage, your divorce. They'll look for anything they can use to suggest you had influence over Winston's will change. Let them look. I have nothing to hide. I know you don't, but it's still going to be invasive and unpleasant. I wanted you to be prepared. After we hung up, I sat down and had a conversation with Fletcher and Ramona. You need to understand something, I told them. Georgina's lawyers are going to try to make her look innocent. They're going to say terrible things about me, about you, about your father. They're going to lie and twist the truth. It's going to be hard to hear. Why would they do that? Ramona asked. Because their job is to defend her. Even if she's guilty, they have to try to create doubt. And the easiest way to do that is to make someone else look bad. That's not fair, Fletcher said. No, it's not. But it's how the system works. I need you both to promise me something. Promise me you won't read the news coverage. Don't look at social media. Don't listen to what people say. None of it is true, okay? They promised. I didn't entirely believe they'd keep that promise, but I had to try. The following week, we started therapy. Dr. Lauren Pierce had an office in a building that didn't look like a hospital. It looked like a comfortable apartment, soft furniture, warm colors, books and art on the walls, a fish tank in the corner. She was in her 40s with kind eyes and a gentle manner. She met with each of us individually first. When it was my turn, I sat on her comfortable couch and felt something in me crack open. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. How do I help my children grieve a father who abandoned them? How do I help them process that the woman he chose over them tried to kill him? How do I explain any of this in a way that doesn't destroy them? You can't protect them from the pain, Dr. Pierce said gently. The pain is already there. Your job isn't to fix it or explain it away. Your job is to sit with them in it, to let them feel what they feel, to assure them that their feelings are valid. Fletcher won't cry. He's holding everything inside. I'm so worried about him. Boys especially are taught that crying is weakness, that they need to be strong. Fletcher is trying to be the man of the family now. He's trying to protect you and his sister, but he's still a child. He needs permission to fall apart. How do I give him that permission? Model it. Let him see you grieve. Let him see that strong people can also be vulnerable. And Ramona? She's crying constantly. She barely eats. She's having nightmares. Ramona is processing her grief more openly. That's actually healthier in the short term. But we need to make sure she doesn't get stuck in the sadness, that she remembers joy is still possible. We talked for an hour about grief and trauma and healing, about the long road ahead. When the session ended, Dr. Pierce said something that stayed with me. Your children are going to be okay, Cassandra. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. Because they have you. They have safety and love, and a mother who would move heaven and earth to protect them. That's more than a lot of children have. I drove home with tears on my face, but hope in my chest. The therapy helped. Slowly, gradually, incrementally, Fletcher started talking more, started admitting when he was angry or hurt or confused, started crying sometimes, usually late at night when he thought no one could hear. Ramona's nightmares decreased. She started eating again, started playing her violin again, which she hadn't touched since Winston's death. And me. I started painting. I set up a small studio in the spare bedroom, bought canvases and paints and brushes, started creating for the first time in 15 years. I painted Winston, not as he was at the end, sick and manipulated, but as I remembered him from our early years, young and hopeful and full of dreams. I painted the twins as babies, as toddlers, as they were now. I painted my grief and my anger and my slowly emerging peace. Art had always been my first language, the way I processed the world. I'd abandoned it when I became a wife and mother, thinking I had to choose. But Dr. Pierce helped me see that taking care of myself wasn't selfish. It was necessary. You can't pour from an empty cup, she said. If you're depleted and exhausted, you have nothing left to give your children. Fill your own cup, then you can fill theirs. So, I painted, and slowly I filled my cup. November turned to December. The city decorated for Christmas. Lights and trees and holiday cheer that felt obscene given what we were going through. Theodore scheduled our meeting to discuss the estate. I took the subway into Manhattan on a gray Tuesday afternoon. His office was in a building overlooking Central Park. Mahogany furniture, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the city. "Thank you for coming," Theodore said, gesturing to a chair. "I know this is overwhelming, but we need to make some decisions about how to manage Winston's assets." He spread documents across his massive desk. Financial statements, property deeds, stock portfolios. "Let's start with the immediate situation," Theodore began. "The trust currently holds approximately $2.4 billion. That includes the valuation of Harrington Technologies stock, liquid assets, bonds, and investment portfolios. The company continues to operate and generate profits. Last quarter alone added $30 million to the trust." My head spun. Those numbers didn't feel real. "The properties need to be maintained," Theodore continued. "The Central Park penthouse, the Montauk Beach house, the Aspen property. There are also 2 vehicles, the yacht, and various other assets. All of this costs money to maintain. Insurance, property taxes, upkeep." "How much are we talking about?" "Approximately $1 million annually across all properties." "That's insane." "It is, which is why you have options. You can sell some or all of the properties. You can rent them out, or you can maintain them until Fletcher and Ramona are old enough to decide what they want to do. What would you recommend?" "Keep the Montauk house." It was Winston's favorite. He bought it specifically thinking about family vacations with the children. "Sell the others if you don't plan to use them. Invest the proceeds to grow the trust." "Okay, that makes sense." As for Harrington Technologies, the company is being managed by the board of directors. Richard Chen is serving as interim CEO. The company is stable and profitable. When Fletcher and Ramona turn 25, they'll have the option to take active roles in the company or continue to hold passive ownership. Fletcher loves technology. He might want to be involved someday. That's wonderful. We'll make sure he has mentoring opportunities when he's older, internships, exposure to how the business operates. We talked for 2 hours about investments and tax strategies and trust management, about college funds and living expenses and what I was allowed to access for the children's needs. "You can use trust funds for anything that directly benefits Fletcher and Ramona," Theodore explained. "Education, medical care, extracurricular activities, therapy, even things like family vacations or a larger home if needed. You're the trustee. You make those decisions. But you need to document everything. Keep receipts, maintain records. The children will have the right to audit the trust when they come of age." "I don't want their money," I said. "The $50 million Winston left me is more than enough for my needs. I want their inheritance protected for them." "That's admirable," Anne noted. "But don't be afraid to use the resources available for their well-being. That's what Winston wanted." Before I left, Theodore handed me a folder. "This is everything Winston left for you and the children. Letters, photos, some videos he recorded in the last months of his life. He wanted you to have them when you were ready. That night, after the twins were asleep, I opened the folder. Inside were dozens of photographs. Winston with newborn twins in the hospital. Winston teaching toddler Fletcher to stack blocks. Winston and little Ramona covered in finger paint. Family pictures from birthdays and holidays and ordinary days. Pictures from our marriage I'd thought were lost. There were letters too. Some addressed to me, some to Fletcher, some to Ramona, all written in Winston's shaky handwriting. I read them all. They were full of regret and love, apologies and explanations, memories and wishes for the future. One letter to Fletcher talked about the robotics competition, how Winston had attended secretly, sitting in the back row, how he'd watched Fletcher win and felt pride so intense it made his chest ache. One letter to Ramona described listening to recordings of her violin performances, how her music had brought him comfort in his darkest days, how he believed she had a gift that would touch the world. The letters to me were harder to read. I know I destroyed the best thing in my life, one letter said. I know leaving you for Georgina was the act of a fool. If I could go back, I would choose differently. I would choose you. I would choose our family. Every time. Another letter described his regret. I missed 3 years of our children's lives. 3 years I can never get back. 3 Christmases, 3 birthdays each. Violin recitals and robotics competitions and ordinary Tuesday dinners. I missed it all because I was too weak to stand up to a manipulative woman. I will regret this for whatever time I have left, and I suspect I'll regret it beyond death. The last item in the folder was a USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop. Video files, dated from 6 months ago to 2 weeks before Winston's death. I clicked on the first one. Winston's face filled the screen. He was in his penthouse office, thin and pale, but his eyes were clear and focused. Hello, Cassandra. Hello, Fletcher. Hello, Ramona. If you're watching this, then I'm gone. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for a lot of things. He coughed, took a drink of water. I wanted to leave you with something more than money and property. I wanted to leave you with the truth, with explanations, with love. I watched all 6 videos. Some were short, just a few minutes. Some were longer, nearly an hour. In them, Winston talked about his life, his regrets, his hopes for the children's futures. He talked about meeting Georgina and how flattered he'd been, how he'd mistaken infatuation for love. She made me feel young, he admitted, important, desired. I was 50 years old and terrified of becoming obsolete. And here was this beautiful woman who seemed to think I was amazing. It went to my head. He talked about realizing his mistake. Within 6 months, I knew I'd made a terrible error, but I was too proud to admit it, too embarrassed to crawl back to you and beg forgiveness. So I stayed. And she tightened her control. Slowly. So slowly, I barely noticed until it was too late. He talked about the systematic alienation from his children. Every time I planned to see Fletcher and Ramona, Georgina manufactured a crisis, a business emergency, a social obligation, something that made me cancel. After a while, I stopped trying. It was easier to give in than to fight. I was already so tired from fighting the cancer. I had no energy left to fight her too. He talked about discovering the affair. I felt vindicated at first, proof that she was as terrible as I'd started to suspect. But then I found the messages about ending my life, about accelerating my death, and I felt fear, real, genuine fear. I was trapped in my home with a woman who wanted me dead. He explained his plan. I couldn't leave. She'd made sure I was too isolated, too weak. If I tried to divorce her, she'd paint me as a paranoid, demented old man. Nobody would believe me. So I did the only thing I could. I documented everything. I worked with Theodore to build an airtight case. I changed my will. I wrote letters. I made videos. I created a paper trail that would expose her after I was gone. In the final video, recorded just 2 weeks before his death, Winston looked directly into the camera. To my children, I hope you can forgive me someday. I hope you understand that my love for you never wavered, even when my actions suggested otherwise. You are the best thing I ever created, not Harrington Technologies, not any of my business achievements. You, Fletcher and Ramona, you are my legacy. Tears streamed down my face. And Cassandra, my first love, my best love. Thank you for giving me the best years of my life. Thank you for raising our children to be good humans. Thank you for being strong when I was weak. I loved you then. I love you still. I will love you beyond death. I'm sorry I forgot that for a while, but I never really forgot. I just lost my way. The video ended. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark living room of our brownstone. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, I grieved for what was lost and what might have been. But underneath the grief, something else grew. Something that felt like closure, like peace. Winston had been flawed and foolish and weak, but he'd also been human. He'd made terrible mistakes, but he'd tried to fix them. He'd loved imperfectly, but he'd loved truly. And that was enough. It had to be enough. Christmas came and went quietly. Adelaide joined us. We exchanged small gifts and ate too much food and tried to find joy despite everything. The twins seemed lighter. Therapy was helping. Time was helping. They laughed sometimes now. Genuine laughter, not the forced kind. In January, I made a decision. I enrolled in a graduate program at NYU, art history, the degree I'd abandoned 15 years ago when I got pregnant with the twins. Are you sure? Doctor, Pierce asked during our session. That's a lot to take on right now. I need something for me, I said. Something that's mine, not as Fletcher and Ramona's mother, not as Winston's ex-wife, just me, Cassandra, the person I was before all of this. Then I think it's wonderful. I also started looking at spaces for an art gallery, something small, something I could manage part-time while the children were in school. The trust fund Winston left me made it possible. I didn't have to worry about money anymore. I could pursue dreams I'd set aside. It felt strange, liberating and guilty at the same time. Why do I feel bad about being happy? I asked Dr. Pierce. Because happiness feels like betrayal when you're grieving. But Winston wanted you to be happy. He said so in his letters. He wanted you to build a good life. Honoring that wish isn't betrayal. It's healing. February brought news about the trial. It was scheduled for June, 5 months away. Theodore prepared me for what to expect. The prosecution's case is strong. They have the medical evidence, the text messages, the financial records, the pharmacy documentation, Winston's testimony via his letters and videos. It's overwhelming. So why is this going to trial? Why doesn't she just plead guilty? Pride, desperation. Her lawyer probably advised a plea deal, but Georgina refuses to admit guilt. She genuinely believes she can convince a jury that Winston was paranoid and vindictive. That's insane. Yes. But her delusion works in our favor. The more she denies, the worse she looks. What about Kyle? He's cooperating. His lawyer negotiated a plea deal. He'll testify against Georgina in exchange for a reduced sentence. Probably 12 to 15 years instead of life. He's getting off easy. He didn't mastermind the murder. He was a weak, greedy fool who went along with it. But Georgina was the architect. She's the one who calculated doses and tampered with medication. Kyle just stood by and let it happen. Still seems too light. I agree. But that's the justice system. Cooperation gets rewarded. The twins were doing better. Fletcher joined the robotics club at school. Ramona auditioned for the youth orchestra and made first chair violin. They had good days and bad days. Days when grief hit them hard and unexpected. Days when they seemed almost normal. We established new routines, new traditions. Sunday dinners with Adelaide. Friday, movie nights. Saturday morning pancakes, like Winston used to make. We talked about their father often, shared memories, looked at photos, watched his videos together. I miss him, Ramona said one night. But I'm not as sad anymore. Is that okay? That's more than okay, baby. That's healing. I feel guilty sometimes. Like if I'm not sad, it means I didn't love him enough. Love doesn't mean constant sadness. Love means carrying the good memories forward, living the kind of life that would make him proud. That's how we honor him. Fletcher was quieter about his grief, but I caught him sometimes in his room, looking at pictures of Winston, crying silent tears. I never pushed, just let him know I was there when he needed me. In March, Theodore called with unexpected news. Winston's mother, Adelaide, has petitioned the court to establish a scholarship fund in Winston's name. She wants to donate $20 million from her own assets to create scholarships for underprivileged students interested in technology. That's beautiful. She's asking if Fletcher and Ramona would want to be involved. Maybe serve on the selection committee when they're older. Make it a family legacy. I asked the twins that night at dinner. Your grandmother wants to create a scholarship fund in your dad's name. She wants you to help choose the scholarship recipients. What do you think? Fletcher's eyes lit up. Like we'd get to help kids who love technology but can't afford college. Exactly like that. I love that idea. Dad would love that. Me too, Ramona said. Can we do something for music students too? Dad loved music. I think that's a wonderful idea. We can talk to Theodore about setting up a second scholarship fund. You have the resources to make that happen. And just like that, my children began to understand the power of their inheritance, not as money to spend on themselves, but as a tool to change lives, to create opportunities, to honor their father's memory in meaningful ways. By April, the scholarship funds were established, the Harrington Technology Scholarship Fund and the Harrington Music Foundation, each funded with $10 million from the Twins Trust. Adelaide helped them review the first round of applications. Hundreds of students applying, each one with a story, each one with dreams. Fletcher and Ramona read essay after essay, looked at transcripts and teacher recommendations, struggled with choosing because so many deserved help. We can't save everyone, Fletcher said, frustrated. No, I agreed. But you can save 50 students this year. That's 50 lives changed, 50 futures made possible. That's not nothing. They chose their first class of scholarship recipients, 25 technology students, 25 music students, each receiving full tuition plus living expenses for 4 years of college. The award ceremony was in May, held at Harrington Technology's headquarters. Fletcher and Ramona presented the scholarships personally. I watched my 12-year-old children stand on a stage and talk about their father, about his love of innovation and music, about his belief that everyone deserved opportunities. Our dad made mistakes, Fletcher said into the microphone. His voice only shook a little, but he built something amazing, and he taught us that when you have resources, you have responsibility, the responsibility to lift others up, to create opportunities, to make the world better. The audience of scholarship recipients and their families applauded. Some cried. These were kids from tough backgrounds, kids who'd thought college was impossible, kids who now had a chance. After the ceremony, a girl approached Ramona. She was 17, clutching her scholarship certificate. Thank you, she said. Her voice broke. My mom cleans houses. We live in a 1-bedroom apartment with 6 people. I never thought I'd go to Juilliard. This scholarship saved my life. Ramona hugged her. My dad would be so happy his money is helping you. That's what he wanted, for his work to mean something beyond just making money. Watching that exchange, watching my daughter understand the power of generosity, I felt Winston's presence, not literally, but spiritually, the best parts of him living on in our children. June arrived. Trial time. I made the decision not to let Fletcher and Ramona attend. They didn't need to see the graphic details, didn't need to hear the prosecution describe how Georgina had methodically poisoned their father. Adelaide and I attended. Theodore sat with us. We sat in the gallery while lawyers presented their cases. The prosecution was methodical and devastating. They showed the text messages between Georgina and Kyle. How much longer do we have to wait? I'm tired of playing nurse to a dying old man. Be patient. The sicker he gets, the less suspicious it will look. What if we help things along? Just a little? How? His blood pressure medication. Too much could trigger a heart attack. Everyone would think it was the cancer. The jury looked horrified. Several jurors glared at Georgina with open disgust. The prosecution showed pharmacy records. Georgina had picked up Winston's prescriptions every month, had access, had opportunity. They showed the autopsy report, the medication levels in Winston's blood, 80 milligrams instead of 20, enough to trigger fatal cardiac arrest. They played Winston's videos, his testimony from beyond the grave. I'm afraid, Winston said on the screen. The courtroom went silent. I'm afraid I'm living with someone who wants me dead. I'm afraid if I confront her, she'll escalate. So I'm documenting everything, creating a record, hoping that if she succeeds, the truth will still come out. Georgina sat at the defense table in a plain dress meant to make her look sympathetic. But her face was cold, calculating. She showed no remorse. Her lawyer tried to paint Winston as paranoid, claimed the cancer had affected his judgment, suggested that I had manipulated him into changing his will. Isn't it convenient, Georgina's lawyer said during his opening statement, that Mr. Harrington, his ex-wife and children inherit billions while Mrs. Harrington, his legal wife, gets nothing? Isn't it possible that Cassandra Wilder manipulated a sick, dying man, turned him against his loving wife? The prosecution tore that argument apart. Mrs. Wilder had no contact with Mr. Harrington for 8 months before his death. Phone records prove this. Email records prove this. She was systematically shut out of his life by the defendant. She had no opportunity to manipulate him. They called Theodore as a witness. Did Cassandra Wilder have any knowledge of Winston Harrington's will change? The prosecutor asked. None whatsoever. Mrs. Wilder was as surprised as everyone else when the will was read. Did she ever contact you on Mr. Harrington's behalf? Never. All communications were directly with Winston. He came to my office alone. He made his own decisions. And was he of sound mind when he executed the new will? Absolutely. I had 3 physicians evaluate him specifically to ensure legal competency. All 3 confirmed he was lucid, rational, and fully aware of his decisions. The defense called Kyle as a witness, trying to suggest he'd acted alone. But Kyle's testimony supported the prosecution. Whose idea was it to increase Winston's medication? The prosecutor asked. Georgina's, Kyle said. He wouldn't look at her. She researched it, figured out the dosage. She did everything. I just knew about it. Did you try to stop her? No. His voice was barely a whisper. I should have. But I didn't. Why not? Because she promised we'd be together, promised we'd have everything we wanted. I was weak and greedy and stupid. The trial lasted 3 weeks, 21 days of testimony and evidence and legal arguments. I attended every day. Adelaide sat beside me. We held hands during the hardest testimony, cried during Winston's videos, supported each other through the nightmare. Finally, closing arguments, the prosecution reminded the jury of the evidence, the overwhelming, undeniable evidence. Georgina Harrington married Winston Harrington for his money. When she grew impatient waiting for him to die naturally, she took matters into her own hands. She altered his medication. She triggered the heart attack that killed him. She did this knowingly, deliberately. She is guilty of murder. The defense made a last desperate attempt. Yes, Georgina had an affair. Yes, she sent inappropriate text messages. But murder? The prosecution hasn't proven murder. They've proven opportunity. They've proven means. But Winston Harrington was a very sick man. His heart attack could have been natural. You cannot convict based on suspicion and circumstantial evidence. You must have proof beyond reasonable doubt. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find guilty? On the charge of murder in the first degree, how do you find guilty? Georgina's face crumpled. For the first time, she showed real emotion. Fear. She grabbed her lawyer's arm. No, this isn't right. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. But the verdict was read. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing was set for 2 weeks later. I walked out of that courthouse with Adelaide. Reporters swarmed us, shouting questions, shoving microphones in our faces. How do you feel about the verdict? Do you think justice was served? What will you tell the children? Theodore and court security pushed through the crowd, got us to Adelaide's car. We drove away from the chaos. It's over, Adelaide said. She was crying. It's finally over. Not quite, I said. Sentencing, still. But the hardest part was done. The truth had been heard. Justice had been served. I called Fletcher and Ramona from the car. She was found guilty, I told them, on all charges. Good, Fletcher said. Does this mean she goes to prison? Yes, baby, for a very long time. Good, he repeated. I hope she never gets out. 2 weeks later, sentencing. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s. She'd presided over the trial with fairness and no tolerance for nonsense. Georgina stood before her in prison orange. Her platinum hair had grown out, showing dark roots. She wore no makeup. She looked smaller than before, diminished. Mrs. Harrington, the judge began, you have been convicted of murdering your husband for financial gain. This court finds your actions calculated, cruel, and deserving of the maximum penalty allowed by law. Georgina's lawyer tried to speak. The judge held up a hand. I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. You will serve this sentence at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. You will be eligible for parole at age 62. Whether you receive it will depend on factors far beyond this court's purview. Georgina was led away. She looked back once, not at me, not at Adelaide, but at the spot where Winston's picture sat on the prosecution's table. I couldn't read her expression. Regret? Anger? Denial? I didn't really care. Kyle was sentenced, separately. 12 years for conspiracy and being an accessory after the fact. He'd be eligible for parole in 8 years with good behavior. It felt too light. But Theodore reminded me it could have been worse. He could have refused to testify, could have helped her defense. His cooperation helped convict her. That counts for something. I suppose it did. With the trial over, we could finally breathe. Finally move forward without that weight hanging over us. The media coverage continued for a few weeks, then died down, then disappeared. The world moved on to the next scandal, the next tragedy. We moved on too. Summer came. Fletcher and Ramona finished 6th grade. Both made honor roll. Both had friends again. Both seemed lighter, happier. We spent July at the Montauk Beach House, the one property I'd kept from Winston's estate. It was beautiful. A sprawling house right on the ocean. 6 bedrooms. Wrap-around porch. Private beach access. Adelaide came for 2 weeks. We cooked together. Walked the beach. Played board games. Built sandcastles with the twins like they were small children again. One evening, Fletcher and I sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Mom," he said, "I've been thinking." "About what, baby?" "When I'm older, I want to run Harrington Technologies. I want to make it even bigger and better than Dad did. I want to create technology that helps people. Is that okay?" "Of course it's okay." "That would make your father so proud." "I'm not doing it for him, though. I'm doing it for me, because I love technology, because I want to build things. Dad's legacy is part of it, but it's not all of it." "That's exactly how it should be." Ramona joined us on the porch, her violin in hand. "I'm going to play something I wrote," she announced. "It's called Remembering Dad." She played a piece that was heartbreaking and beautiful, sad notes mixed with hopeful ones, grief mixed with gratitude, a perfect encapsulation of our journey. When she finished, all 3 of us were crying. "That was beautiful, Mona," I said. "I'm going to perform it at my fall recital. I want people to know that even sad stories can have beautiful parts." Wise words from a 12-year-old. In August, I opened my gallery. A small space in Brooklyn. Just 2 rooms, but mine. I called it Wilder Gallery. My name. My identity, separate from Winston, separate from being a mother. Just me. I featured emerging artists, people whose work deserved to be seen but hadn't found a platform yet. I priced everything affordably, made art accessible. The opening night was crowded. Adelaide came. Theodore came. Fletcher and Ramona came dressed up and proud. "Look at what Mom built," Ramona told everyone. "Isn't it amazing?" It was amazing, not because the gallery was fancy or prestigious, but because it was mine, something I'd created from my own vision. Fall arrived. The twins started 7th grade. I started my graduate program at NYU. Adelaide became a fixture in our lives, visiting weekly, sometimes more. 1 year after Winston's death, we visited his grave together, all 4 of us. Me, Fletcher, Ramona, and Adelaide. We brought white lilies, Winston's favorite. The headstone was simple. Winston Alexander Harrington, beloved father, the dates of his birth and death, and one line the twins had chosen. He made mistakes, but he loved us. Perfect, honest, true. We stood at the grave, each of us with our private thoughts, our private grief and gratitude and complicated feelings. "Hi, Dad," Fletcher said. He was taller now, growing into a young man. "It's been a year. A lot has happened. Georgina is in prison. Justice was served like you planned. We started scholarship funds in your name. We're helping kids go to college. It feels good." Ramona stepped forward. "I'm first chair violin now, Daddy. I'm composing my own music. I wrote a piece about you, about missing you and loving you and forgiving you all at once." I wish you could hear it. Adelaide spoke next. "I'm sorry I wasn't the mother you needed, Winston. I'm sorry I pushed too hard and loved too conditionally. I'm trying to do better with your children, trying to be the grandmother they deserve. I hope you can see that. I hope you know we're all healing." Then it was my turn. "Winston," I said softly, "we made it through the hardest year. Your children are thriving. They're kind and smart and so full of potential. You'd be incredibly proud. I think about you sometimes and I feel sad, but more often, I feel grateful. Grateful for the good years we had. Grateful for Fletcher and Ramona. Grateful that you loved us the best you could, even when your best was flawed. I placed my hand on the headstone. Rest easy now. Your children are safe. Your legacy is secure. And the best parts of you live on in them. That's all any of us can hope for, really. To leave the world better than we found it. To be remembered with love despite our mistakes. You achieved that. So rest, Winston. You've earned it. We stood in silence for a few more minutes. Then we walked back to the car together. A family. Not the family we'd planned. Not the family from before. But a family nonetheless. 5 years passed. Time moved the way it does. Quickly and slowly. Full of ordinary days and extraordinary moments. Fletcher excelled at technology. Won national robotics competitions. Got early acceptance to MIT. Developed a passion for adaptive learning platforms that made education accessible to underserved communities. At 17, he'd already filed 3 patents. Had investors interested in his innovations. Was being called a prodigy by tech journalists. But he stayed humble. Stayed focused on using technology for good. The Harrington Technology Scholarship Fund had grown, now helping 200 students per year. Dad would be proud, he told me one day. But I'm proud of me too. This is my work, my vision, built on his foundation, but mine. Exactly right. Ramona flourished musically. First chair violin in the San Francisco Youth Symphony by 16. Accepted to Curtis Institute of Music. Composed pieces that were performed at fundraisers and concerts. The Harrington Music Foundation had provided instruments and lessons to over 10,000 children. Free music education in schools that couldn't afford it. Scholarships for talented students from poor families. Music saved me, Ramona said. When Dad died, when everything was terrible, music was the only thing that made sense. Now I want to give that gift to other kids. The gift of beauty and expression and healing. She'd grown into a thoughtful, compassionate young woman. Still carried sadness sometimes, but also carried joy. Adelaide became the grandmother she should have been from the start. Sunday dinners turned into weekly tradition. She attended every recital, every competition, every important moment. Made up for lost time the only way she could. Thank you, I told her one day, for being here, for showing up. It means everything to them. It means everything to me too, Adelaide said. They gave me purpose. They gave me a second chance. I won't waste it. And me? I completed my PhD in art history. Started teaching part-time at NYU. Expanded Wilder Gallery to a second location. Became known in the New York art scene as someone who championed emerging artists. I started dating Wesley Grant, an art history professor. He was kind and patient and had no agenda beyond enjoying my company. We took things slow. No rush. No pressure. The twins liked him. That was important. He's not trying to be our dad, Fletcher said. I appreciate that. He makes you happy, Ramona observed. We want you to be happy, Mom. I was happy. Not the uncomplicated happiness of before, but something deeper. Happiness earned through surviving hardship. Happiness that understood joy and sorrow could coexist. I still thought about Winston sometimes, wondered what he'd think of the life we'd built, the children we'd raised, the way we'd used his money to help others. I think he'd be proud. I hope he'd be proud. On what would have been Winston's 58th birthday, I took out the letters he'd written. Read them again. Let myself feel the complicated tangle of love and anger and forgiveness. Then I put them away and went downstairs where my children were making dinner, laughing, arguing about whose turn it was to set the table, being normal teenagers in our home that was warm and full of life. This was Winston's real legacy. Not the billions, not the company, not even the scholarships, though those mattered. His legacy was 2 incredible humans who'd survived trauma and chose kindness anyway, who had resources beyond measure and used them to lift others, who remembered their father's flaws but chose to carry forward his best qualities. That evening, the 4 of us gathered around the dining table. Me, Fletcher, Ramona, and Adelaide. We held hands, and Fletcher said grace, something we'd started doing after Winston's death. Not religious exactly, just a moment of gratitude. We're grateful for this food, Fletcher said, for this family, for second chances, for the ability to turn tragedy into something meaningful, for Dad, who loved us imperfectly but truly, and for each other, always for each other. Amen, we said together. We ate dinner, talked about school and work and upcoming events, made plans for summer vacation, argued about movies and music and all the ordinary things families argue about. Normal, beautiful, healed, not perfect. We still had hard days, days when grief ambushed us, days when we missed Winston with physical ache, days when anger about what Georgina had done flared up hot and fierce. But those days became less frequent, less consuming. We'd learned to hold our grief alongside our joy, to acknowledge loss without being destroyed by it. In prison, Georgina served her sentence. I didn't think about her often, didn't waste energy on hate. She'd lost everything. Her freedom, her reputation, her chance at parole for 25 years. That was consequence enough. Kyle had been released after 8 years, disappeared from public view. I hoped he'd learned something, hoped he'd become a better person. But I didn't particularly care either way. Our story wasn't about them anymore. It was about us, about surviving and thriving and building something beautiful from broken pieces. On a Saturday morning in September, 5 years after Winston's death, I sat in my studio painting. The morning light came through the windows. Coffee steamed beside me. Music played softly. I was working on a portrait. The 4 of us, me, Fletcher, Ramona, and Adelaide, sitting on the porch of the Montauk house, smiling, together. A family portrait. Not the family I'd imagined at 24 when I married Winston with $17 and enormous dreams, but the family I had, the family we'd become. Imperfect and hard-won and absolutely precious. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Ramona appeared in the doorway. "Mom, Adelaide's here. She brought bagels. I'll be right down. Also, there's a letter for Fletcher. From MIT. Oh wow, should we wait for him to open it? He says he's too nervous. He wants us all there." I cleaned my brushes and went downstairs. The kitchen was full of warmth and noise and family. Fletcher sat at the table, the envelope in front of him unopened. Adelaide poured coffee. Ramona buttered a bagel. "Okay," Fletcher said. "I'm opening it." He tore the envelope, pulled out the letter, read in silence. His face gave nothing away. Then he looked up with the biggest smile I'd ever seen. "I got in, full scholarship. They want me to start in their advanced technology program." We erupted in celebration, hugs and laughter and tears of joy. "I'm so proud of you," I said, holding my son. "My brilliant, kind, resilient son. Your father would be so proud." "I know," Fletcher said. "I feel like he's watching, like he knows." Maybe he was. Maybe some part of Winston's love and pride transcended death. Maybe it lived on in moments like this. Or maybe it was enough that we remembered him, that we carried his best qualities forward, that we built our lives in a way that honored his memory without being bound by his mistakes. That afternoon we drove to the cemetery, all 4 of us. It had become tradition, big news, good or bad, we told Winston. We stood at his grave, older and wiser and healed. Dad," Fletcher said, "I got into MIT. I'm going to do amazing things, things that would make you proud, but mostly things that make me proud. I hope you can see that. I hope you know we're okay." Ramona added her news. "I'm performing at Carnegie Hall next month, a piece I composed. It's called From Grief to Grace. It's about our journey, about you and Mom and everything we survived. I wish you could be there, but I feel like you will be, somehow." Adelaide spoke softly. "Your children are extraordinary, Winston. Cassandra raised them to be strong and kind and generous. You would be amazed at the people they're becoming. I'm honored to be part of their lives. I hope you can see that I'm trying to be better, trying to love them the way you wanted to." I stepped forward last. "We made it, Winston. 5 years. Your children are thriving, using their inheritance to change lives, becoming the people you hoped they'd be. The best parts of you live on in them. The worst parts we've learned from and left behind. That's the best any of us can hope for. To be remembered with love, to leave a legacy of goodness. You did that, so rest easy. Your work is done. Ours is just beginning." We stood in comfortable silence. Then we walked back to the car together. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Beautiful, like a promise. Tomorrow, Fletcher would start preparing for MIT. Ramona would rehearse for Carnegie Hall. I would teach my classes and run my gallery. Adelaide would visit and tell stories and be the grandmother these children deserved. We would live, fully, joyfully, gratefully. That was Winston's final gift. Not the money, though that helped. Not the properties or the company or the material things. His final gift was the truth. The truth that set us free from Georgina's manipulation. The truth that gave us closure. The truth that allowed us to heal. And we'd taken that gift and built something beautiful. That's what love looks like when it's real. Imperfect. Complicated. But ultimately, protective. Ultimately willing to sacrifice everything to ensure the people you love are safe. Winston had been a flawed man. A foolish man, in many ways. But in the end, he'd been a loving father. And that was enough. As we drove home through the Brooklyn streets I'd walked for 15 years, through the neighborhood that had witnessed our struggles and triumphs, I felt peace. Complete, genuine peace. The story that began with humiliation on chapel steps had ended with healing and hope. The woman who'd sat on a stone wall weeping had become someone stronger. The children who'd been rejected had become powerful forces for good. We'd survived the worst. We'd faced injustice and grief and betrayal. And we'd come through it together. That night, after dinner and laughter and ordinary family time, I went to my studio one last time. I looked at the portrait I was painting. Our family. Smiling. Together. And underneath, I wrote a title. After the storm, a family restored. Because that's what we were. Not undamaged. Not unchanged. But restored. Put back together in a new configuration that was somehow stronger than before. I thought about everyone watching this story. Everyone who'd stayed with us through the pain and the justice and the healing. Maybe some of you are going through your own storms, your own betrayals, your own grief. Maybe you're sitting on your own stone wall, wondering how you'll survive. I want you to know something. You will survive. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually, you'll find your way through the pain to something that looks like peace. You'll discover strength you didn't know you had. You'll build a life that honors what you lost while embracing what you still have. That's what we did. That's what you can do too. So if this story meant something to you, if it gave you hope or made you think about forgiveness and justice in the complicated nature of love, I need you to do something. Hit that like button and let me know this story mattered. Drop a comment telling me about your own journey, your own survival, your own strength. I read every comment. I see you. Your story matters too. And subscribe to Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips, because this channel is about real stories. Stories about surviving impossible things. Stories about love that transcends death and justice that comes eventually and healing that happens one day at a time. Check the description box where I've linked to another incredible story. This one about a mother who discovered her daughter's teacher was her husband's mistress. What she did next will absolutely blow your mind. Thank you for being here. Thank you for feeling this story with me. Thank you for believing that even the worst betrayals can lead to unexpected blessings. This is Dr. Phillips reminding you that your story isn't over. The best chapters might still be unwritten. Keep going. Keep healing. Keep becoming. I'll see you in the next one. And remember, Fletcher and Ramona started with nothing but grief and ended up changing thousands of lives. Cassandra started as a powerless ex-wife and ended up a successful artist and educator. Adelaide started as an absent grandmother and became the family's foundation. They all transformed their pain into purpose. You can too. Whatever you're going through right now, whatever storm you're weathering, whatever betrayal you're processing, there's a version of you on the other side who's stronger, wiser, more compassionate because of what you survived. That version is waiting for you. Keep walking toward them, one step at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time. You'll get there. I promise. Just like Fletcher and Ramona and Cassandra did. Just like you will too.